If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another podcast with your host, Joe and Jen. And today we have a really special guest, a legend in many different areas, but one in particular we're excited to talk about today is private money lending, and that's Jay Conner. So thank you so much for coming on today, Jay.
Absolutely, Jen and Joe. I'm so excited to be here. And the reason I'm so excited is because we're going to be talking about my favorite subject, which is, of course, private money. And the reason I'm so excited and passionate about it is because private money has had a bigger impact than anything else that Carol Joy and I have brought into our business. It's just, we tripled our business and our income when we started using private money all the way back in 2009. So I can't wait to dive in and talk about it and talk about exactly how I do it. You know, I tell people all the time, I got 47 private lenders, individuals, human beings, just like you and me, that are investing in our deals, loaning us money on our deals. And not one of those 47 private lenders ever heard of private money or private lending or self-directed IRAs until I put on my teacher hat and I started teaching people what private money is. They don't even know what an accredited investor is. And so I teach and I practice all the time how to raise lots of private money without ever asking for money.
Well, and spot on, because that's how we got introduced to you, was through Ron LeGrand and his crowd, because Ron was like, oh, I'm bringing Jay on. You guys did tons of presentations and education like for a long, long time. So I'm not trying to blow your cover, but you're not new to this. Like, you've been doing it for a while. Am I right?
Yes, true. My wife, Carol Joy, and I, we started investing full-time in single-family houses all the way back in 2003. So we've been full-time since 2003, and we started using private money to fund our deals in February 2009. So I haven't relied on any institutional lenders or banks or hard money lenders or any kind of institutional money since 2009.
So prior to 2009, you're a full-time investor. You're doing it with your wife. What was that like? You were flipping houses back then? And what part of the country are you doing this in?
Yeah, this is all right here in eastern North Carolina. We live in a little teeny tiny town called Morehead City, North Carolina, population 8,000. Our total target market that we invest in is only 40,000 people. We do 2 to 3 deals a month. Our average profit now is $82,000 per deal. And I don't share that to brag. I am not bragging when I share that, but I am sharing that to make a point. And the point is, you can make really, really good average profits and not have to do many deals. And you don't have to be investing in a very, very large market, which there's a lot of people out there that's got that misconception that you've got to be in a huge market. I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond and just dominate the market. There's a great argument to be made to be investing in the outlying areas or in the suburbs or in smaller areas, because that way you don't have to deal with so much of the competition like most real estate investors do.
And averaging $82,000 every single deal you're doing is a fantastic number. So,
well, on 2 to 3 deals as well, instead of having to do a crazy high number, like that's incredible. Because sometimes people get intimidated. I need a large team. I need to do 20 deals a month. But I can't wait to hear a little bit more about how you've been able to structure all this.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it didn't happen overnight, that's for sure. In fact, I pretty much have to screw up everything and mess it up really, really bad to start with in order to figure it out, to get it, to get it smoothed out. So I'm glad to share my mistakes, the good, and the bad and the ugly, so other people don't have to make the same mistakes.
Well, that's what we're here for, sharing our journeys along the way, because man, it is a lot going on, left, right, other, keeping up with everyone and everything. So yeah, let's talk about this private money. I'm very intrigued.
Well, yeah, because I want to talk about like, what was that shift? So you're doing deals before that. So before like 2009-ish, you were doing it probably like lenders and banks and credit and all that stuff. But then 2009 is when you guys made that shift to private money.
Yes, and it's been my experience and what I have observed with most other real estate investors. There's pivotal moments. There are triggers. There are things that happen in your life, things that happen in your business that changes everything and can change everything for the better. Well, here's what happened. In other words, I just didn't wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I'll go learn about private money and go raise some money. No, it was out of need. It was out of need of having to do something different. So from 2003 to January 2009, as I said, I just relied on the local bank to fund my deals. That's all I knew to do. I thought that you just had to go, apply. You had to go to the banker. You had to get on your hands and knees and put your hands underneath your chin and say, please fund my deal. And, raise your skirt up so they can look at all your personal assets and look at your financial statements and your credit score and all that stuff. I thought that's the only way to go. Well, that worked great. That worked great for me for 6 years until January. What was that pivotal moment? So until January 2009, I had 2 houses under contract. I thought I still had a line of credit at the bank. And so I called up my banker. His name was Steve. And the bank, they're no longer in business. They got bought out. Anyway, it was BB&T, Branch Bank and Trust, was the bank that was funding my deals. And I called up Steve, my banker, and we had a little chit chat. And then I told him about these 2 deals that was representing over $100,000 in profit and the funding required for the deals. Well, Steve and I had this same kind of conversation many, many, many times for 6 years. And so I learned like that. I mean, in a second, Steve informed me that my line of credit had been closed with no notice and that the bank was no longer loaning money out, commercial money out to real estate investors. And so I said, Steve, what in the world are you telling me? Why has the bank shut my line of credit down? I've always been, good on my payments, good relationship. He said, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, but now you just gave me a global financial crisis because now I got these 2 deals under contract that I can't fund. So I hung up the phone and I sat right here at this very desk. And I'm going to share a question, Jen and Joe, right now that I ask myself. And this question that I ask myself can help fix any problem that your audience is facing right now, whether it's personal, relationships, financial, health, career, doesn't matter. And here's the question I asked myself. I said, Jay, who do you know? It's not how, it's who. Who do you know, Jay, that can help you with your problem? And by the way, these people running around saying every problem's an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have no opportunity. I had a problem. I didn't have a way to fund these 2 deals. And so when I asked myself that question, who do you know, Jay, that can help you with your problem? I immediately thought of Jeff Blankenship, good friend of mine and Carol Joy's. He was living in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time, and he was investing in real estate. So I called him up. I told him about my conversation that I just had with my banker. And he said, well, Jay, welcome to the club. I said, what club is that, Jeff? He said, the club of losing your line of credit at the bank. He said, my bank just shut me down last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to fund your deals? And he says, well, Jay, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He says, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how regular people, individuals can use their retirement funds to loan money out and be a private lender and fund your deals? You ever heard of that? I said, no. He says, well, there's this gentleman down in Jacksonville, Florida by the name of Ron LeGrand. And Ron LeGrand can teach us about private money. I said, well, Jeff, what is private money? He says, I don't know, but Ron says we can get a lot of it really, really quick. I said, okay, good. Let's go learn about private money. So in February, that was the next training in February of 2009. That was my very first Ron LeGrand training that I went to. And I went there to learn about private money. And I did. I learned what it was. I learned that it was all about 180-degree shift in your thinking. I tell people all the time, it's very hard to own real estate until you own the real estate between your ears. And so I learned really quickly that this world of private money is not about applying. It's got nothing to do with your credit score. And the biggest shift in my thinking was that in this world of private money, we make the rules. We, as the borrower, make the rules. We set the interest rate. We set the frequency of payments, and it's non-negotiable. I mean, it's our program. And so I learned about it. I put my program together. I came back home, and what did I do? I didn't ask anybody for money. I put on my teacher hat, and I started out with my own network. People that I go to church with, people in my cell phone, people that I consistently was seeing every week. I joined Business Networking International. I blew up the size of my network very, very quickly. And so I was able to attract, without asking for any money, I was able to attract $2,150,000 in new funding available to me of private money in less than 90 days. And so people will ask, they say, Jay, that sounds fantastic, but I'm still confused. How do you get your deals funded and you're not asking for money? So here's the secret sauce. Here's the secret sauce. We separate the conversations with new potential private lenders, people in our own network. We separate the conversations of teaching what private money is, how they can get high rates of return safely and securely. And I'm not asking, I'm sharing, right? And I'm doing this throughout my daily life. Like I'm meeting somebody for coffee, or I'm having lunch, or whatever. And so I share the program as how they can become involved as a private lender. And if they're interested, they tell me. I don't have to ask them. And if they've got retirement funds that they're not happy with the kind of returns they're getting, I'll introduce them to the representative at the self-directed IRA company that I got a relationship with, and they'll answer any questions about that. So when they like the program, they tell me how much they've got to invest. And then here's part of the secret sauce. I'll say, all right, I'll put your work together. I'll put your deal to work. I'll put your money to work for you just as soon as possible, just as soon as I find a deal. That might be a week, 2 weeks, or a month, or whatever. And I'll call you up when I've got that for you. So then, desperation's got a smell to it. If I talk about a deal and the program in the same conversation, I'm already sounding desperate, right? So I call them up, and here's the exact scripting. I'm going to give you the scripting right now. I call them up with what I call is the good news phone call, the good news phone call. And I call them up. We have a little chit chat. And let's say, Jenn, you're one of my new private lenders. I say, Jenn, I got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house in Newport under contract with an after repair value of $200,000. The funding required for the deal is $150,000. Closing is next Friday. You'll need to have your money wired to my real estate attorney's trust account that's going to do the closing by next Thursday. I'm going to have my attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing I would say is, Jenn, do you want to fund the deal? Well, of course you want to fund the deal. Mm-hmm. You've been waiting for the phone call that I promised you I'd call you as soon as I can put your money to work. And another important note, if you, as my new private lender, if you have moved your retirement funds or a portion of your retirement funds to a self-directed IRA company at my recommendation, and I introduced you to that company, and you've moved your retirement funds over, you're not making any money until I do put your money to work. So I'm ethically bound to give you the good news phone call, or your money's just sitting there making no money. So again, it's very, very important to understand that, the worst time to be trying to raise money is when you need it, right? Is when you need it for a deal. So teaching, having that mindset of having a servant's heart, and just sharing with people what you're doing, letting them know about private money, and then letting them know about a deal when you're ready to put their money to work. Very, very important to understand those steps.
Wow.
I mean, you just gave like a whole mini course for everybody listening. So if you're listening to this and your head,
just stop and rewind and get your notepad and just jot all those in the script, how to separate those two things. Like, holy smokes. Like, you just made it what sounds a little intimidating. I'm not going to lie. Private money sounds like, oh, that's for other people. But you just really broke it down. It doesn't sound that scary now.
But private money is really easy. It's really simple as long as you understand this whole mindset and the process that's involved. And it's not, it's not overnight necessarily. I mean, there's people that you've got connections with that are just sick and tired of, they're not getting any returns on their money. But I've got some other private lenders that when I first told them about it, it might be a year or 2 years down the road before they were ready. So that's why you always want to be sowing. It's all about sowing. It's not about reaping. That's why you always want to be planting those seeds, because you never know when somebody's going to be ready or who they're going to tell. Of those 47 private lenders that we have, there's quite a few of those I've never met them in person. They've been referred to me by other private lenders that are funding our deals. And so we've just talked over the phone, never met them in person. And that will happen automatically. You'll start doing business with individuals and, they talk, they tell their friends, their connections, about this great, program. And so the word spreads.
So I want to go back in time. So now it's 2008. You have the light bulb moment, or 2009. You have the light bulb moment. Oh my gosh, there's this thing called private money. You start putting it to work, what you learned. You went and got the education from one of the best, was Ron. Love him. And then obviously now, like, what did that do for your business? Like, did it, like, now you've got access to funding? Like, what was that like? Is that why?
So the immediate benefit was, and there's lots of benefits, lots of reasons I love private money over instead of institutional money. But one huge immediate benefit is our business tripled the first 12 months in 2009 when we started using private money. And here's why it tripled. It tripled because you had all those foreclosures that were going on in 2009, because people had all those mortgages that should have never been approved for a mortgage. So you got the foreclosures were flooding the market, and simultaneously the banks stopped loaning money to real estate investors. So if you were going to invest in those foreclosures, you had to have other funding because you weren't going to borrow it from the bank. You either had to have your own money or you had to have private money. So I was able to pick and choose, because of private money, all those deals, which ones that I wanted to do. So that's the main reason that our business tripled. Another reason that our business increased and still has today, right on through now, is because I had a limit to my line of credit at the bank. And so I'd have deals come across my desk. Now, of course, you all know if you can buy creatively, you're going to buy creatively. If you can buy subject to the existing note, you will. If you can buy with seller financing, you will. But as you all know, the majority of the deals, of the off-market deals or any deals, require all the cash. And so with private money, there's no limit to the amount of private money you can have and use. There's no limit to the number of private lenders that you can do business with. So it's like the handcuffs were taken off. The financial handcuffs were taken off. So I didn't have to pass over any deals that I wanted to do. When I was borrowing money from the bank and I had a limit to my line of credit, I passed on deals all the time. I couldn't wholesale them because there's nobody around here to wholesale them to. Right?
So you got a business, you see a shift happening, you pivot quickly, adapt to what's currently going on in the market, and with that right pivot, 3x your business when a lot of investors back then were going out of business.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
this is the part of, getting around the right people, because if it wasn't for your friend who even recommended to go to the training, like who knows what would have happened, would have happened.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I was just going to share a powerful formula that I did not know I was using the formula when I executed and implemented what happened in that story that I just shared. But there's a formula that I learned from Jack Canfield, co-author of all the Chicken Soup for the Soul series books. And this formula is the following. This formula will help fix any problem. And the formula is E plus R equals O. Now, most people, and I'll explain what that is, most people are walking around with a different formula, a different mindset. Most people are walking around with a different formula called E equals O. The E stands for event. Whatever that event is that happens in your life, whether you brought it into your life or you didn't, something happens in your life, the event. Well, in my story, what was the event? I got cut off from the banks, right? So that was the event. Now, most people walking around are living with this formula, E equals O. The O stands for outcome, or the result of that event, or how it is you're experiencing life after that event. Well, that's called a victim mentality. That's also called not being 100% responsible for everything that happens in your life. So the better formula is E plus R equals O. E is the event. The R is your response to that event. And guess what? You can choose whatever response you want to whatever happens in your life. And it's your response that dictates the outcome. It's not the event that dictates the outcome. It's your response to that event. So I had different responses that I could have done to the event, being cut off from the bank. Well, I could have quit. I could have said, oh, well, the banks aren't loaning money. Guess I got to go to the house, right? Can't be a real estate investor right now or anymore. Or I could have, and I did, say, okay, what are the other options that we've got? So I asked myself, who can help me with my problem? Was the response that was going to take me down a road. And you know what? If I hadn't responded to the event the way that I did, I wouldn't be here on your podcast.
It's so true. Such valuable information right there, for sure.
And it's really interesting. Like when you come on that fork in the road, like that one little turn could, change the whole trajectory of your life. And so now here you are, fast forward, I've seen you on stages with Ron. I've seen you have your own things happening and your own events and things like that. So you've been doing deals a lot now over the last few years. Fast forward to like, what's business like today for you guys?
Yeah. So we've now rehabbed over 500 single family houses right here in our local area. Now that's over a period of time, of course. As I said, right now we're doing, 2 to 3 deals a month with the average profits of 82,000. But I mean, that math works out. You don't have to, do a lot of deals. The majority of the deals that we are doing are flips because that's where the big money is. However, when I buy a house on terms, such as buying subject to the existing note or buying with seller financing, the general rule of thumb is if you buy on terms, of course, we're talking about off-market houses. I mean, there's nothing in the multiple listing service. I mean, we have no inventory. When we put a house in the multiple listing service with our realtor, I mean, there's multiple offers and, it's going right away. But the general rule of thumb is when you buy on terms or buy creatively, then we're going to sell on terms. If the house doesn't need a major rehab, sell it on rent to own or lease purchase. But the majority of the deals out there require all the cash. So I don't want to leave cash or private money buried in a property. So with that being the case, the rule of thumb is if you buy on terms, sell on terms. But if you buy with all private money, all cash, then you're typically you're going to want to cash out, get it sold instead of leaving the money buried in that property.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So write a big check to buy it, but get a bigger check back in a short time.
Oh, let me tell you, that's another reason I love private money, because I always bring home a big check when I buy the property. I mean, who wants to get paid to buy properties, right?
Yeah.
When I was borrowing from the bank, I had to, take a large down payment, to the closing table when I buy. But in this world of private money, we're able to bring home a check when we buy. The phrase on my real estate attorney's check stub is excess cash to close. And I love excess cash, right? And so the way this works is I do not borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value. I didn't say 75% of the purchase price, right? 75% of the after repaired value. So if I've got, say, an after repaired value of $200,000 on a single family house, if it needs rehab of, say, $30,000 or $40,000, I'm going to buy that house all day long for either 80, 90, or no more than $100,000. Well, remember the formula. If I can borrow up to 75% of the after repaired value, well, 75% of $200,000, I can borrow $150,000 on that particular deal. Well, here comes $150,000 from my private lender being wired to my real estate attorney's trust account for the closing. But if I'm buying it for $100,000, that's excess cash that's funded of $50,000. So I'll bring home that $50,000, well, less some closing costs, and I'm going to use the majority of that $50,000 for the renovation, for the rehab. And then I'll keep most of the money on the difference of selling it and what I still owe the private lender, because we do interest only or just accrue interest and don't not even make any payments when we're borrowing private money. So that's the way the cash flow works. I don't know of another way to get a large infusion of cash in your checking account than using private money to fund your deals.
So, okay, if you're listening to this and you're like, whoa, like, what did he say? So Jay just broke down the technique. I heard you talk about this at a seminar, Ron, years and years ago. And you're like, yeah, I actually get a check when I buy it, and then I get a bigger check when I sell it. I get another check then too. And I'm like, whoa, you're getting paid twice on the flip, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you found the numbers to fall into, so long as it fits this criteria and it works. And I think that's the art of having private money, is you're able to call these shots and make it a win for your lenders too, because now these folks who are lending you money, they're getting good returns on this money, right? They're happy that you're putting their money to work.
Oh yeah, I'm paying them 8%. And people ask me, they say, well, and by the way, I've been paying my private lenders 8% ever since February 2009, and I'm paying them 8% today. And they say, wait a minute, Jay, how are you paying your private lenders? How can you do that? How are you paying them 8% still today? And interest rates have gone up, out the ceiling. How does that work? I said, well, here's the way it works. Prior to COVID, the 12-month average certificate of deposit yield at the local bank, it got down to 0.17% average. Well, you can go down to First Citizens Bank right here on Bridges Street in Morehead City, and you can get a 12-month CD now for 4.5%. Just checked it day before yesterday. So that's the difference. And they say, Jay, that's gone up multiple times since COVID. I said, that's right. I said, there's two reasons why I still pay my private lenders 8%, the same thing I was paying them in 2009. They say, well, what's that? I said, well, first reason is I make the rules, not them, right? I make the rules. I set the interest rate. And the second reason that my private lenders absolutely love me is because 8% is still about twice as much as you can get at the local bank. And I'm not borrowing unsecured money. We're collateralizing it with the real estate. So that's the thing that, you want to get straight in your mind if you're listening to this podcast, is that we make the rules. You always bring home a big check. Your credit score's got nothing to do with it. There's no limit to the amount of money you can have. And there's no appraisals. I never have to get an appraisal on the property. I just use my realtor's comparative market analysis. And in fact, there's about 20 reasons I love private money, but right there, what I gave you is big enough reasons if that's all there was.
Love it.
I mean, like, wow, crash course on this stuff. So, like, okay, I'm a real estate investor. I'm listening. I'm watching. Like, how do I get started in this, Jay? Is there like more like, how do I learn, or what is that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for asking, Joe, because I just launched my brand new 7-day private money challenge. And here's the way it works. I've just recorded these videos, and they're only 15 to 20 minutes long. And as soon as someone enrolls in the 7-day private money challenge, you will immediately receive the first video in your email inbox. And then the next 6 days at 10 a.m. Eastern time, you'll get each subsequent training. I promise you, come join me in the challenge. You'll learn how to raise private money very, very quickly. And I promise you, we'll have a lot of fun while we're doing it together. So I got a simple way for you to get enrolled. You take your cell phone and you type the word challenge, just the word challenge, CHALLENGE, type the word challenge and text it to the number 58885. So again, come join me in the 7-day private money challenge. And you just take your cell phone, type in the word challenge, and text the word challenge to the number 58885, and I'll send you an immediate reply, and you'll have the URL you can click on, and come join me for a bunch of fun and get a bunch of money.
Well, you know what? I'm actually going to take you up on that offer myself. And the reason why I say that is because Jen and myself, we have a self-directed IRA. We've had, we do a lot of deals in there. We do a lot of deals that we're buying with seller financing or lease purchase. With a wrap, and then we do the lease option when they move in. So
buy in terms, sell in terms,
same as you.
That's right.
But what we're finding is, and I don't know if there's just less investors out there or what it's looking like, high rates are scaring people away, but we're finding quite a fair amount of deals right now. And
yes, yeah,
I want to be able to take some of these down, and that's why we're going to start getting into private money. And this is where I'm like, this is perfect timing.
Absolutely. And I don't want to deal with the banks at all. Like, so what you're saying, I'm mentally taking notes. I'm going to go back and listen to all this, and we're going to sign up for this challenge.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I can't wait to see you in there. I promise you, you're going to love it. One of the sessions that I do in the 7-day challenge, because it just occurred to me recently, I can teach people how to get a lot of private money, but one thing I hadn't been answering the question, and that is, well, really, how much private money do I need? Right? I mean, really, how much do I need to attract? So I do this session in the challenge that's called How to Calculate Your Freedom Number. And so I walk you right through the process. There's a document that you download from the challenge, and you'll go through the exercise, and you'll figure out within less than 20 minutes exactly how much private money that you want to attract in order to fund the number of deals that you want to fund that's going to give you the freedom and the lifestyle that you want.
Well, and I love that too, because, we have a lot of ourselves and a lot of our clients and, even just other investors that we run into that, I'm going to buy a deal on terms, and the seller says, Joe, I need $5,000 down, but you need another $5,000 for closing costs, and you need an insurance policy, and you got to put the utilities, and you might need $15,000 for that deal. And obviously, when you're looking for somebody who's going to rent and they're going to do the lease option, they're going to probably have 15, 20, 25, 30, sometimes more. So, but even sometimes just finding one of your private lenders who might lend you that 15,000 until you find your renter who's going to do rent to own 2-3 months later, you can now have even that. So this is why private money, it could go great for fix and flips. It could go great for some of these deals where maybe you're buying it with seller financing or terms, and that seller might need a small down payment, and you feel like I can get that back for my renter once they move in and do rent to own, or you're going to do seller financing and they're going to give you a big down payment and you could pay that back. And I just think that opens the door to giving more options. Doesn't mean you got to go spend all that private money right away, but it's definitely going to open up the door to more options, right? And that's what this is a benefit of. And to have that money sitting there at fair terms, your people are happy they're going to get a good return on it too, and you're able to do more deals from it, it's a win for everybody involved.
It really is. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I use private money just like that all the time in what we call second position. So we'll use smaller amounts of private money, and the private lender still has their own promissory note, still has their own mortgage or deed of trust collateralizing that note, but they're in second position underneath that first mortgage that you either bought, subject to the existing note or on a wrap. So I'm so glad you made that point, Joe. It's you can combine the two strategies together of buying on terms and using private money to make the deal work.
Yeah, because like we just bought a deal in upstate New York. Seller wanted 10 grand down. I think we got like 7,000 in closing costs. So we needed 17,000 to buy the deal. We knew we were going to close. We started marketing in the area, rent to own coming soon. And our renter actually gave us first month's rent and the 15,000 non-refundable. We got a check for 17,700. So we got all that money back.
Wonderful.
And on that one, it was great. It was only like a 2-day separation. Usually it takes like a month or 2 or 3 or sometimes more, depending on where it is. But that was a quick one. But to have that kind of capital to be able to just do that.
Well, not to deplete your cash, because really it's nice to know that like you've got it there, but you have other options, because you don't want to always have like if you're starting to really pick up steam, you don't want to have to rely on what's in your own bank account to be able to utilize private money. That's going to be just another game changer for so many listening, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you're just getting started and you're like, okay, we know one of the big rules of real estate, it does take money to make money, but also one of the next rules is you could use other people's money. So not having money is not an excuse. Jay's going to go over some techniques on how to start putting to work other people's money and helping them too, but also helping your career take off. The first deal that I did a double closing. My lawyer actually, I didn't understand what was going on, but he fronted the first money because they had the certified check sitting there all at the same time. But that's really what happened on that deal, because my friend bought a course of Ron LeGrand's back in 2000. That stuff worked back then, still works today too, right? So great. So we got the challenge. Obviously, somebody's going to get to join that, learn more about how to raise private capital, things like that. So do you have any interesting stories or a deal that you could just share with the audience? I know you probably have a plethora of them, but is there just like one, like, hey, like this has been a great example? Or
Sure. Well, how about one I just did 5 weeks ago and just sold it last week that fast?
Yeah.
And it was all because of private money being able to make it happen. So the seller's name, so this is an off-market property, oceanfront condominium, top story right here at Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. So this seller responded to one of our Google ads. And what I love about Google is the sellers are looking for us. They're going into the Google and they're typing, one of 75 different magic phrases, such as how to sell my house fast, sell my house, on and on and on and on. So anyway, they found us on one of our Google ads. And so we responded, of course, right away. And what we learned was that this owner had 2 major motivations in selling that property very, very quickly. One was it was an inherited property. Both his parents had passed away, and he didn't even live here. He doesn't even live here in the area. Didn't have any interest in using this condominium. And so the other motivation is that it was going to the courthouse steps as a foreclosure being sold in less than 2 weeks of him finding us on Google. So you got a foreclosure going to the courthouse steps, and it's an inherited property. So he responded to our marketing, found us on Google. We talked to him, and here's the numbers in the situation. Bought it all cash. And I bought it in 5 days from him calling in. 5 days, because we had to stop that foreclosure sale, right? So you can't, unless you got all the cash or you got private money, there's no way you're going to close a deal in 5 days from the time they contact you. And you got to have a relationship with your real estate attorney or your title company, whatever, you're using to close deals, you got to have a relationship with them to get the closing done that quickly, because I'm telling you, time kills deals.
Mm-hmm.
So the offer was $425,000. And my realtor had told me that the value that we could put it in the multiple listing service for, the after repaired value, was, might as well say $595,000. So we went and looked at the property right away. The renovation was a whopping $11,000 is all it took. $11,000. I mean, all it was interior paint. I mean, there's no home inspection on a condominium that's got HOA, right? And so interior paint and fix some scuffs and et cetera in the sheetrock. And it was already furnished totally with luxurious furniture and paintings on the wall. Every room in the condominium had an oceanfront view. I mean, it's like you were on a cruise ship looking out over the property. So we bought it. We got our music video put together. We always use a music video when we go in the multiple listing service. And here's a little secret. Actually, it's a big secret. We go in the multiple listing service with our realtor on Mondays with the music and video, the pictures and everything, under a category called Coming Soon, which means they can see the price, they can see the music video and the pictures, but they can't get in the property until it goes into active status. So coming soon on Monday. You see, I want to build up demand. And so on Friday, we go active. Well, on Thursday night, before going active, I had 2 all cash offers, no appraisals, no nothing, sight unseen. They hadn't even been inside the property. They were looking at the music video. Well, those were low ball offers. Didn't accept either one of those. But then on Friday night, the first day we went active, I had it listed for $595,000. First offer came in all cash Friday night for $615,000. And then an offer right behind that came in all cash, closing 10 days, $628,000. So we sold that oceanfront condo for $628,000. I bought it for $425,000. That's a nice little $200,000 thing, right?
Yeah.
I had the $11,000 in interior paint. I did pay my realtor 5% and happy to do it. Paid him a little over $30,000 for the sale. So that was a $170,000 profit in 5 weeks from the time.
That's a bell ringer right there.
Wow.
Now, what's the lesson? What's the lessons here? Number one, if I didn't have access to private money, I couldn't have closed on that deal prior to the foreclosure sale, right? But I closed in 5 days. So private money was the key. Having that Google ad in place was key. Having the relationship with my real estate attorney that I could do a fast closing was key. And then having that music video and professional pictures and coming soon on Monday and going active on Friday, all that just worked together to make the deal happen.
My gosh. And knowing you probably got a big old check just for even buying the deal.
Of course I did. I didn't borrow just $425,000. In fact, as a matter of fact, I think I borrowed like 500. Bought it for 4. Yeah, I think I borrowed like 500,000, just an even 500,000. So I brought home like a $75,000 check, but I only used 11,000 of it, and I didn't mind going ahead and borrowing that amount of money because I knew I was going to cash out very, very quickly.
Yeah, right. And you're doing it in 5 weeks.
What a story. It's so inspirational. And I hope you hear that and don't think, oh, I could never do that, because you totally can. It's like Jay said, it's a mindset shift. So work on the real estate between your ears and go sign up for that challenge. I'm going to put that up here one more time in case you missed it. But oh my goodness, 7 days, all Jay, going into private money and hearing more about how to utilize other people's money and not having to go to the banks. And again, we're all about helping people out. So if you didn't have all of those things lined up, Jay, you wouldn't have helped that gentleman that reached out to you, right? Like the Google ad, and that was a situation. So,
and that was a big win for him. I mean, the mortgage payoff was like $325,000 or so. So the seller pocketed $100,000.
Amazing.
So does this only work where you live, or does this work everywhere? Like, it sounds great there, but like, okay, I live in the middle of, we live in Florida, but like, I live in Texas. There's no ocean. Does this work here too?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it works where there are properties and where there are people. You got to have people and properties.
There you
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
Okay. Well, and that makes a lot of sense too, because, I'd always say really be a student of your market, right? Some markets around the country right now, they're all different. Like where upstate New York, where we're doing a lot of our deals, that market is still red hot, on fire, no inventory, very reasonable housing prices to begin with really not many natural disasters besides snow. So you can still get some really great deals, and that market's red hot. In Florida, they're still selling, but it just seems like days out of market are a little bit longer. So you want to always make sure that you understand what the market is in your area, right? But there's still plenty of markets where it is red hot right now. I see all of my friends in Buffalo, Rochester, and other pockets of the country. One of my friends, he's in Allentown, PA, and they're like, my daughter is looking for a house and she's frustrated because she keeps on putting offers for $30,000, $40,000 over asking, and there's no inventory. Like, guys, go find a deal there.
Yeah.
Right? Go find an off-market deal there that's not on there. Go find a seller, and if you find those in those markets, my gosh, the sky's the limit.
Don't wait until you need the money. That's a big takeaway from Jay today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, if you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube or wherever, I'd love for you to come join the party. Text the word challenge to the number 58885.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Jay. I know you're a busy man, and you and Carol Joy are just such amazing people. I can't wait to see you again, hopefully in September at the Family Mastermind, and maybe have to have you back after we've joined the challenge and talk more about our experience and hear some more of your wonderful stories.
Yeah.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you so much, Joe. God bless y'all.
Awesome.
Thank
you
you
so much for joining us, Jay.
Take care.
You got it.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/moneyguide. That's jconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.